I've just gotten done with watching the first episode of the 1000-Year Blood War arc of Bleach. The lights were turned off, the headphones were on, and the vibe was on check, and literally from the very start to the end of the episode, it had felt like I was watching a theatrical movie. The overall level of quality in the animation, sound design, music, and voice acting was nothing short of spectacular. The story that is adapted into the first episode follows the events of the first 5 chapters of the 1000-Year Blood War arc, spanning from chapters 480 to 484. Now there is so much to dive into and discuss with my first impressions and thoughts on the return of the Bleach anime after 10 long years with the first episode of the new series. Now the first episode of course begins with the Quincy Emperor's song as Yubak narrates it, speaking of the promised return of the sealed Quincy King. We then go on to the Soul Society being alerted that a large number of hollows have disappeared. Now we really get to see a close-up view of the Soul Society's Research and Development Institute, and it looks absolutely stunning. I mean, from the very get-go you can appreciate just how amazing it all looks. From the blue underground lighting and the red blaring screens alerting the Shinigami to something being very wrong. Now the first minute of the episode ends with Mayuri stating that there is only one group who could be responsible for the disappearance of this large quantity of hollows. Now the first minute of the episode sets the tone of the series as we then see a mysterious Quincy who appears to have released hollow bait within Karakura Town. And unfortunately for a group of 2 newly recruited Shinigami, they have been tasked with protecting Karakura Town. Firstly, because Karakura Town is prone to a lot of hollow attacks, and secondly, because the Soul Society doesn't want to keep relying on Ichigo. Despite him being a powerful Shinigami, his human life would be disrupted if he were to constantly tend to the hollows that keep appearing within the town. So for that reason, 2 new Shinigami have been appointed as the guardians or protectors of the town. We have Shino on the left and Ryunosuke on the right. Now from the very onset of this episode, I absolutely love the atmosphere, the scenery, the visuals, and the lighting that is on display. There is so much attention to detail here, and they really did an amazing job of bringing Karakura Town to life. Even during the scene where Ryunosuke is jumping from lamppost to lamppost, you get to see the skyline of Karakura Town behind him. It's this really dark, eerie atmosphere, and it's very foreboding, and it eventually leads to Ryunosuke coming across a hollow that ends up chasing him. Ryunosuke discovers that Shino has been captured by a group of hollows who look way more sinister than we have ever seen them before. Now, I don't remember the hollows looking and feeling this terrifying before. Genuinely, this is already one of my favorite things that I love about the new Bleach anime in comparison to the previous series. In addition to this, look at how Shino being captured is depicted here, as we see the blood pouring down the almond onto the Zanbakudo. You can tell from the onset of this episode that the new anime is going to be totally uncensored. There are several very gory and violent moments within this episode that I'll highlight, which will further emphasize this point that the new anime is going to be totally uncensored. Look at how Ryunosuke being attacked by the hollows is depicted here, as the blood splatters into the air and the moonlight reflects off of the droplets of blood. It is visually stunning. Now Ichigo, Uryu, Chad, and Orihime all arrive to protect the pair of Shinigami who have been defeated by a group of hollows who have appeared in response to the hollow bait that the mysterious Quincy had activated at the very start of the episode. Now the 2022 remixed version of Number 1 begins playing, and this happens after we see Ichigo for the first time as he confronts the hollows. This is a moment that truly gives you goosebumps, and it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It is evident that the anime staff knew how much this moment means to all of us, just how long that we have waited to hear and see Ichigo again. His return in anime form felt like a triumphant celebration, hearing him say "let's settle this" as we see the Karakura Town gang going to face off against the menacing hollows that are standing before them. The music, voice acting, and stunning visuals make for this being one of the most memorable and impactful scenes in a list of dramatic moments within this first episode of the Bleach 1000-Year Blood War arc. Now, multiple hollows end up emerging as they tower over the city block in a scene that resembles a kaiju movie. The hollows are in CGI, but they blend in so well with the 2D animation. It doesn't feel jarring, and their presence just feels so much more menacing than before, especially with the red, piercing eyes that they have been given in this new anime. Each of the members of the Karakura Town gang are reintroduced with a stylish name card that pauses from the action, and this happens right after they either attack or defend themselves against the hollows. And all the while, the new #1 remix plays in the background, and it really makes you feel nostalgic, especially during this particular scene. Ichigo then ends up activating his Bankai, and we see some very impressive visual blur effects. His Reiatsu is depicted with these small instances of lightning that appear all around him, and it is animated so flawlessly, especially with the inclusion of golden particles that again represent Ichigo's immense Reiatsu. Now, this very first Bankai transformation within the new Bleach anime does not actually happen in the manga, and I'm sure that this was a scene that was included just to build up on the hype of the return of Bleach and the reintroduction of Ichigo and the Karakura Town gang. His Bankai transformation is literally burning with these golden flames of Reishi that just wipe away, revealing our first glimpse of Bankai Ichigo in the new series. The following Getsuga Tensho after he activates his Bankai was mind-blowing. The sound effects that pop as Black Reiatsu gathers at the tip of his Zanbakudo with the reality warping effects surrounding the attack, as well as the black particles and the blinding flash that happens after he unleashes the attack, which wipes out all of the nearby hollows. There's a lot of beautiful visual effects here following the attack, as we see this super impressive eruption of flames and the emergence of smoke clouds that are beautifully animated. We see the reflections of the explosiveness of the attack shining onto the nearby buildings, and this is what makes me believe that the new Bleach anime is very cinematic, and it is so different from the original Bleach anime from 2004. After Ichigo introduces himself, we get the title card for the new anime, and this happens 9 minutes into the episode. It is really impactfully throwing us back into the world of Bleach. In addition to this, we have a mid-roll card which shows us Ichigo with the label Soul Reaper with this pink background. Now, assuming that the coloring of the pink for Shinigami and blue for Quincy that we had seen in the trailers leading up to this first episode will continue to be referenced in visual pieces like this that we see in the episode mid-roll. We get to have the character revealed as we learn what group that this character falls under and the respective color that represents that group on screen that accompanies a sketch of the character, as we see this ink-brushed sketch of Ichigo here on the right hand side. I found it so wholesome to see Ichigo and the others interacting again here, as the voice actors don't miss a beat, and it feels so natural and heartwarming to hear all of them again, especially after all of these years. The entire episode just has this melancholic feeling for me. I felt so nostalgic just thinking back to 10 years ago when I had last heard new lines from these characters. During the brief downtime during this episode, I constantly had realizations that I am watching a brand new episode of Bleach, and it felt so good to finally say that and to know that even I am in disbelief that Bleach is back, despite having followed every piece of news leading up to the airing of this first episode. There is an awesome shift in atmosphere when Eben appears behind Ichigo, towering over him. The lighting, music, and mood of the scene shifts in such a captivating manner, seeing how the setting sun shines into Ichigo's room and how it affects the mood and overall color tone of the backgrounds and the characters was a really nice touch in my opinion. I also appreciated Orihime still chewing on the bread, totally unfazed by what's going on, while the two Shinigami, Shino and Ryunosuke, are cowering in the background. That was a pretty funny scene. Ichigo then confronts Eben outside, and this music begins to play that matches the curious tone of Ichigo. Now, there was no doubt that Shiro Sagasu would return to compose some amazing music for the new series of Bleach, and his contribution here proves that there was no one else better for the job. Now, this moment again felt really cinematic when Eben and Ichigo were speaking, and it was ominous as Ichigo realizes that he isn't dealing with an ordinary Oranka. He is in fact battling against someone who is wielding a Quincy cross. We then cut to the 64th division of Rukon called Sabitsura as Yumichika and Ikaku are scoping out the area, wondering where all of the citizens have disappeared to. Eventually they theorize that the other citizens of Rukon have abducted the missing people, but little do they know the real reason why this disappearance has occurred. The head captain is then finally shown as we see that he is sensing his lieutenant Chojuro Sasakibe is engaging in a battle with an intruder. Then, holy crap, the Shinigami who was about to report to the head captain ends up being beheaded just as the Sternritters arrive. This is another very violent and brutal moment that proves that they were not lying when they had said that this new anime series was going to be totally uncensored. I really enjoyed Ichigo's battle with Eben. It was fun to see, especially with all of the various Quincy techniques that Eben utilizes. The animation during this very first noteworthy fight against a Quincy is just so smooth and fluid. The attacks are bright and vibrant, and the consistent quality of the visual effects combined with the amazing animation just helps to take the Bleach anime to a totally different level. We end up cutting back and forth with the battle against Eben. The music that plays when the Quincy speak with the head captain is very fitting. It is like an imperial orchestra. and it fits the role of the Quincy in this final arc as an evil military power that is set to march and destroy the Soul Society during this final arc. When Sasakibe ends up being impaled by a Quincy javelin, it was so sudden and impactful. The blinding blue reishi of the weapon, combined with Sasakibe's blood and lifeless body, was just another memorable moment during this episode. While Chojuro is pinned against the wall, they don't hold back here, as they show a lot of blood pouring down from his body. And my god, there is no chill. First the beheading and now this. We then get to see how incredible the flames of Yamamoto's Zanpakuto look in this new anime as he activates his Zanpakuto and attacks the Sternritters just before they leave. This attack is another blinding display of visuals. Taguchi sets the tone and atmosphere so well that it really lets him emphasize and exaggerate the visuals for the attacks, as well as the destruction that is caused by them. We then cut back to Ichigo vs Eben with this amazing soundtrack accompanying the fight, as Ichigo effortlessly evades his attacks. Eben, after taunting Ichigo to use his Bankai, is successful after Ichigo activates his Bankai in another absolutely stunning scene where the lighting, effects and animation all combine to yet again give us another impactful Bankai transformation. Meanwhile, Yamamoto speaks to his lieutenant Chojuro, and you can see that his left arm is severed and he is coughing up large volumes of blood. He is also struggling to relay his final message to Yamamoto, as we learn that the Quincy are able to do something with the Shinigami's Bankai. Now this is purposefully intertwined with Ichigo having activated his Bankai and Eben attempting to steal it. We get to hear Eben doing this German chanting that is combined with Ichigo's Bankai chipping away from his body, and this was so incredible. I mean, what a way to end their battle, as Ichigo of course breaks free from Eben's grasp and he defeats him with a beautifully animated Getsuga Tencho that erupts across Karakura town, and we see more of these stunning visuals of the town with the sun setting in the distance. The sky then literally turns blood red during the end of their encounter and the final words that they exchange between each other, as Ichigo wonders what Eben wanted to do with his Bankai. But before he gets an answer, the Sternritter escapes into the shadows, which again are depicted really well in the anime. The first episode of the new anime concludes with us being taken to Sealburn, the Quincy fortress in the shadows. The choir erupts in a chorus of singing as Yhwach is introduced, having just severed the arm of one of his subordinates. Now the blood wipes away from the screen impactfully as it introduces us to the sealed Quincy King that was spoken about at the start of the episode. Now again, in another very violent but well executed shot, we see the blood spill onto the ground and it ends up being lit up by the blue reishi that emanates from the floor. It looks so good to see Bleach this raw and uncensored, and the episode ends with Yhwach requesting to hear the Sternritter's report for the cause of peace. This first episode did not end up having any opening or ending song. Instead, the episode had started adapting events from the manga, and it had concluded with a 4-minute recap sequence of the original 2004 anime, going over the events that had occurred over the 366 episodes. Now this was accompanied by the song Rapport that was sang by Tatsuya Kitani, who we know is going to be singing the opening for the new 1000 Year Blood War arc anime with a song titled Scar. From the very first episode of the Bleach anime, we can tell that there is some amazing scenery. Everything from the lampposts, the traffic lights, the power lines, the street lights, as well as the blood and how light reflects off of it, or the reishi particles, or the after effects of special attacks. I don't think there was anything to criticize when it comes to the visuals that we have seen. In addition to this, the music was very intense and cinematic. The animation was incredibly fluid, especially with the sound effects that end up emphasizing the action that is taking place on screen. And how could I forget the incredible talent of all of the voice actors who had played a role within this episode. There is so much to compliment and praise this first episode of the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. We know that the series has started on a strong note, and I look forward to seeing future episodes. Now, be sure to subscribe to the channel and stick around for more Bleach 1000 Year Blood War arc anime content. I will also be uploading a manga versus anime comparison, going over all of the differences between the first episode of the anime compared to how it was done within the manga. We're going to be discussing any additional scenes that were in the episode which served to pad out the story and provide more context, which is what all of us have been hoping for when it comes to this new series. So for now, don't mind me, I'm going to go ahead and rewatch the episode another couple more times since it was that mind-blowing. Now thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video.